The video game industry has a serious problem. There are too many games. In 2023, over 1,000 games launched on Steam every month. That's over 30 games per day. As a result, many amazing games get buried by this constant stream of releases and don't get the attention they deserve. Well, I want to help solve this problem. I dove deep into the Steam store, trawling through hundreds upon hundreds of indie games to bring you 10 amazing games that you've never heard of but you absolutely need to play. And the last 2 games on this list are completely free, no strings attached. So let's kick things off with El Paso Elsewhere. Saying that El Paso Elsewhere was inspired by the Max Payne series is an understatement. It almost feels like the lost sequel in the beloved series by Remedy Entertainment. You play as James Savage, a dual-wielding anti-hero struggling with addiction and the fallout from an abusive relationship. All the elements of a spiritual successor to Max Payne are here. Diving, bullet time, dramatic monologues, and tons of enemies to shoot. Gameplay-wise, El Paso Elsewhere isn't trying to reinvent the wheel. During the game's 50 or so levels, the gameplay loop doesn't really expand beyond shoot and kill. You make progress by freeing civilians, who are trapped in the surreal levels, and by finding the occasional key card. As you move through the game, new enemy types and weapons are slowly introduced. Gameplay is repetitive but fun, and the levels are short enough that you easily get that one more turn flow state that old school shooters do so well. But the gameplay isn't really the star of the show here. That's the narrative.
Pretty sure time and space aren't supposed to be doing that.
El Paso Elsewhere deals with some pretty dark themes, but handles them in a mature and nuanced way. More similarities to Max Payne pop up here. Just as Max was voiced by Remedy's creative director Sam Lake, James Savage's voice acting, which is exceptional by the way, was done by Strange Scaffold's creative director.
On my trip, I picture the pills in the bag with the pills and taking the pills in the bag with... It feels inevitable.
He even went one step further, writing and performing an album's worth of hip-hop songs that play throughout the level. Another place where El Paso raises the bar is the stunning cinematography of the cutscenes. This, combined with the protagonist's well-written monologues, drives you forward through the campaign. If you're pining for the good old days of the PlayStation 2 era linear action shooters, or are a fan of the Max Payne games, El Paso Elsewhere will be straight up your alley. If the Game Awards had a Weirdest Game of the Year award, it would without a doubt go to 24 Killers. This quirky and experimental adventure game is an homage to the Japanese developer Love the Lig, best known for its cult classic anti-RPG Moon, a game that parodied the mechanics and tropes of traditional RPGs and served as a major influence in the creation of indie classics like Undertale. 24 Killers is heavily inspired by Love the Lig's games, even more so than Undertale. But it also includes enough new ideas to stand out as its own unique adventure. And considering what the game is about, unique might be underselling it. You are Home, an interdimensional being that looks like a hand with a giant eye and possesses the body of a dead soldier on a small island. Your goal is to care for the island's inhabitants, called Mons, on the orders of an alien called Moon. Yes, the game isn't shy about its inspiration. Concretely, 24 Killers is a slice-of-life game. You talk to the Mons, help them solve a problem, culminating in unique minigames. Succeeding at those means they'll let you take a picture of them. Collecting these pictures lets you take the form of these creatures, granting you abilities which you'll need to access new areas. Just as in the Love the Lig games, gathering currency also plays an important role, and there's no combat whatsoever. But 24 Killers isn't just an homage, it also does its own thing. The developer fixed some of the dated design choices of Moon, such as the grinding for currency and lack of hand-holding. And Love the Lig's games were always grounded in a relatively normal setting, such as the world of an RPG in Moon. 24 Killers, meanwhile, well, just look at this. Despite the surreal setting, the people you encounter are all the more relatable. The writing is full of heart, and dialogues switch effortlessly from characters making witty jokes to sincere emotional moments. All this, combined with the chill, laid-back soundtrack and pre-rendered graphics that harken back to JRPGs from the late 90s make 24 Killers a one-of-a-kind experience that's essential for adventure game fans and those who are looking for something truly different. Minesweeper is still one of the most addicting games on the planet, but since its release over 30 years ago, its gameplay hasn't really evolved. That's what developer Buck set out to change with Let's Revolution. They turned Minesweeper into a full-blown roguelite. Let's Revolution's setup is simple enough. Mines are replaced with an evil king and his guards. To reach the next stage, you have to find out where the king is hiding, but you have to think carefully about every move. Unlike Minesweeper, hitting a tile with an enemy doesn't mean instant death, but landing on a guard does deal damage, and they will charge new attacks over time. Their numbers grow quickly between levels, and overextending just a bit can easily result in the end of your run. There are some rules that you can use to turn the tide in your favor. For example, enemies only appear on road tiles, and the king himself can only hide at a dead end. That means you can more or less deduce where they will show up. And not everything that's hidden is bad. There are chests on every map that give you currency to buy skills, upgrades and items with. There are also unlockables that will give you a permanent edge on the battlefield. The more you play, the more abilities you unlock that give you more options to deal with the king and his minions. There are also several classes to discover, each with a drastically different playstyle. Surprisingly, all these roguelite elements blend perfectly with the classic Minesweeper gameplay. They eliminate the frustrating guesswork that plagues the 1990 original. It honestly surprised me that someone hasn't thought of this sooner. There are also several difficulty options, such as an easy mode that automatically checks tiles that are safe to access, and an unlockable New Game Plus that will challenge experts of the genre. Add the beautiful art style and animation work into the mix, and you get a fantastic roguelite that genre enthusiasts and Minesweeper fans cannot afford to miss out on. If you've ever played games like the Mass Effect trilogy or Red Dead Redemption 2 and thought to yourself, man, I wish I could skip all the shooting and just hang out with my crew all day, then you need to check out Saltsea Chronicles. This adventure game lets you travel the seas of a foreign world in search of your lost captain. The twist is that instead of playing as one character, you're in control of an entire crew. Don't underestimate that responsibility. Throughout your adventure, you'll have to make choices that will impact the story. Your decisions will influence the islands you visit, the crewmates who tag along, and the outcome of questlines you encounter. When you're not exploring islands, you're on your ship, getting to know the crew. Even though you're not controlling a single character, there are still many dialogue choices to be made. The game hops between various crewmates as the story develops. You'll have to watch what you say too, because some answers can cause strife on your ship, forming problems that you'll have to deal with later. A word of warning. Gameplay in Saltsea Chronicles is limited. The game might look like a point and click, but it has more in common with a choose-your-own-adventure novel. There are no puzzles to solve. Reading and making dialogue choices are the game's bread and butter. The developers did go the extra mile by creating an optional card game, which serves as a nice change of pace to the narrative beats. Just don't expect the equivalent of Gwent in The Witcher 3 here. Saltsea Chronicles' focus on reading, combined with its children's book style art, gives the game a very nostalgic feel. Each island you visit feels like a chapter of a book or an episode in a season of a show, complete with its own theme. The game plays into this idea. Every chapter begins like a vintage TV series, with an intro cutscene and music setting the mood. And ends with the resolution of a narrative arc. If you enjoy choose-your-own-adventure games with fleshed-out characters and aren't afraid of doing some reading, then Saltsea Chronicles will be right up your alley. If you've ever played games like the Mass Effect trilogy or Red Dead Redemption 2 and thought to yourself, man, I wish I could ignore my crewmates entirely and just shoot people in the face, then Slayers X might be your kind of game. This boomer shooter, a game designed to look and play like a 1990s FPS such as Doom or Quake, is perhaps the most original spin on the genre thus far. Slayer's X, or Slayer's X Terminal Aftermath, Vengeance of the Slayer as it is officially called, was developed by the 16-year-old Zane_Rocks_14 all the way back in 1998 and features Zane himself as the protagonist.
I'm awesome.
During his quest to avenge the death of his mom, you'll fire weapons such as the X100 Rapid Mutilator, fight toilets, and watch beautifully voice-acted cutscenes.
Last thing. I am your...
Mikey, no!
If this sounds too good or bad to be true, well, that's because it is. Slayer's X is actually the follow-up to the brilliant 90s internet simulator Hypnospace Outlaw. If you've played that game, you're probably already acquainted with Zane through his obnoxious personal web pages. And Slayer's X is actually an in-universe FPS, based on Zane's self-drawn comics. Slayer's X masterfully translates Zane's crass personality into corny one-liners, eye-blinding graphics, and distasteful sound effects. With the many misspelled words and your mom jokes in the script, you'd almost start to believe that Slayer's X was actually made by a very confused teenager. Developer Tendershoot did everything to keep up that appearance, including doing interviews as Zane himself. Zane even has his own Twitter account, where he routinely insults his haters and frames negative Steam reviews as a government conspiracy. As you've probably noticed by now, Slayer's X isn't exactly subtle. Your senses are continuously overloaded. And while this was a nice but brief change of pace in Hypnospace Outlaw, making an entire game out of that is another matter entirely. Luckily, the developer was aware of this. The levels are short and varied, and the campaign takes around 5 hours to beat, which ensures that it doesn't wear out its welcome. If you vibe with the late 90s era look and feel, or enjoy a well-made boomer shooter, definitely give Slayer's X a shot.
must revenge her.
Sokoban-style games, where you solve puzzles by moving objects on a grid, are almost ubiquitous on Steam these days. But the list of games that actually raise the bar, such as Baba Is You or Steven's Sausage Roll, is very small. That list is now a bit bigger, with the release of Can of Wormholes. Keeping with the tradition of weird protagonists in these Sokoban-likes, you play as a sentient tin can, carried around by worms. The game consists of a hub world in which you can freely roam around, and grid-based levels where you solve puzzles. As with every good puzzle game, Can of Wormholes seems very simple, but once you actually start playing, you realize how much complexity there really is. Just as its contemporaries, Can of Wormholes is built around eureka moments. Every puzzle introduces a spin on a seemingly simple mechanic that requires you to think outside the box. An early example are these orbs. You quickly notice you can eat them to grow. Then you realize you can push them around. A bit later still, you discover that pushing them in the water creates a bridge, and so on. As the puzzles get more difficult, you'll inevitably get stuck. In other puzzle games, you'd have no other choice than to keep trying or consult a walkthrough to progress, which can be frustrating. Can of Wormholes, meanwhile, manages to avoid that feeling with Gain Insight, a brilliant mechanic that in my opinion should become a default option in any puzzle game. You can use Gain Insight to play an easy puzzle that teaches you the mechanic you need to solve the actual puzzle. Unlike with a video walkthrough, this keeps a satisfying feeling of solving a puzzle, and it ensures that you won't be out of your depth in later, more difficult challenges, because you've learned the mechanic yourself. Gain Insight makes Can of Wormholes way more accessible than most other games in the genre, minimizing the frustration of those puzzles that you just can't figure out without a hint. And even if you decide to rely on the Insight system, there'll be plenty of content to sink your teeth into, with over 100 puzzles, including meta puzzles in the hub world. Simply put, Can of Wormholes is an instant puzzle classic that rivals the best in the genre and should not be missed by anyone who likes a good brain teaser. The moment you boot up VIVIDLOPE, you're transported to the year 2000, when Sony was still publishing experimental Japanese games and Sega was still manufacturing home consoles. It is an ode to a time where games had cute mascots, abstract colorful graphics and energetic electronic soundtracks. VIVIDLOPE doesn't just look like a game from that era, it plays like one too. The game is an arcadey action puzzle platformer. Your job is to paint all the tiles in each level by walking over them, while avoiding enemies and environmental hazards. There are items you can use to help you out, such as a hammer to eliminate enemies with, and paint rollers that instantly fill in a complete line. How hard you want all this to be is entirely up to you. There's an easy mode, which lets you progress through the game with slightly simplified level layouts and reduced enemy numbers. You can beat VIVIDLOPE just fine like this, bathing in the nostalgia of a simpler time in gaming. But choosing easy also means you won't be able to truly master the game, because after beating every level, your performance gets a rank, based on how many tiles you managed to paint, how many lives you lost, and how efficient your route through the stage was. On easy, these ranks go up to a very solid S+, but to reach 100% completion, you need to collect V ranks on each of the 136 stages. That means perfecting a stage, and that's only possible on hard mode, the difficulty setting VIVIDLOPE was designed around. This is a challenge to say the least, and 100%ing the game will require complete mastery of the game's mechanics and will take dozens of hours. So, VIVIDLOPE is a great choice for two kinds of gamers. The ones who have fond memories of games of the early 2000s and want to re-experience that age of gaming in a modern package, and the ones who don't fear a challenge and will keep playing a game until they've mastered it completely. If you recognize yourself in one of these categories, definitely give VIVIDLOPE a chance. If you like your games to have a bit more randomness, then Mortal Sin might be the game for you. This is a roguelike, focused on first-person melee combat, and it does a fantastic job. The combat in Mortal Sin is some of the best the genre has to offer, and feels on par with juggernauts like Chivalry 2 and Warhammer Vermintide. It's hard to explain how good Mortal Sin's combat feels without having experienced it yourself. Every sword hit feels chunky, maces hit like a truck, and great axes are as slow and powerful as you'd expect. Those are just a small sample of the many weapons you'll encounter in the game. And then there are the moves that don't rely on your equipment, such as parry, a charge attack to close distances, and a kick that helps with crowd control. Once you get the hang of Mortal Sin's mechanics, you'll be able to use its combat system to its full potential. There's a full-blown dismemberment system, for example, which lets you strategically cut your enemies' limbs off, and you can mix and match moves to form combos, and chaining those will reward you with a damage multiplier. This is a very addicting gameplay loop, and Mortal Sin hooks you further with the sheer variety of ways you can approach the game. There are over 15 classes, each with their own unique playstyle. The Paladin, for example, benefits from carrying a shield, while the Monk focuses on unarmed combat. The game is still in early access as of the making of this video, but there is already a wealth of content available. The game currently offers over 30 weapons and over 40 levels, and sole developer Nikola Todorovic is actively working on the game, listening to community feedback and publishing meaty content updates on the regular. And regarding Mortal Sin's unique art style, YouTube's compression algorithm can't really do it justice. When you're playing yourself, everything is crisp and clear, and the limited color palette brings a moody atmosphere to the game, further accentuated by the creepy monster designs. In conclusion, Mortal Sin should be on the watch list of anyone who likes roguelites or intricate combat systems. And looking at its development progress, the game could very well become one of the best roguelites on Steam. As promised, the last two games on this list are completely free to download and play, no strings attached. The first game is called South Scrimshaw Part 1. If you feel that regular nature documentaries are too boring, this game might be the one for you. South Scrimshaw Part 1 is a 90-minute long visual novel that tells the story of an alien whale on Kronos 5, a planet somewhere in the universe. The game's hook is that it's presented as an actual documentary made by human colonists living on Kronos 5.
Our whale calf wants to play, not eat. But from the stone dog's perspective, there's little difference.
The story is fully narrated and presented in over 400 beautifully drawn illustrations, all from the hand of one man. The stunning artwork is the highlight of the game, and combined with a rich soundscape of sound effects and music, you'll quickly lose yourself in the world, invested in the journey of an alien whale as it struggles for survival. Of course, this is still a game, and that implies some kind of interactivity. While the story is linear, meaning no choices or multiple endings, there are points in the game where you can dive deeper into a certain word or concept. This is how the game introduces you to the world surrounding the whale, like other life forms on Kronos 5 and the history of the human colony. As the name suggests, the story of our protagonist doesn't end here. The developer is currently hard at work on part 2, the second and final chapter of the saga. If you enjoyed the game and want to support the development of the sequel, the Steam page does offer a digital artbook as optional DLC. Even without the conclusion of the South Scrimshaw saga, Part 1 is one of the most creative story-based games around. If you enjoy biology, nature documentaries, sci-fi, or simply a good story that is completely free, you cannot go wrong with this game.
The strange plant clod is his mother.
Last, but certainly not least, comes a free RPG developed by none other than Dean Carter, the co-creator of the Fable series. He left the AAA industry in 2009 to work on his own projects, and Moonring is his latest and perhaps most ambitious release. So, Moonring is a retro RPG in the style of the Ultima series from the 80s and 90s. All the classic elements of that legendary RPG franchise are here. Turn-based gameplay in a gigantic open world with complete player freedom. And when Carter says freedom, he means it. You're free to do whatever you want in the world of Caldera. You can become an explorer and discover the world on land or by ship. You can be a historian, unraveling the history of the world and translating the language of its people, or if you'd rather dedicate your life to one of the gods or amass wealth by trading, that's possible too. There's even an entire magic system to discover, hidden somewhere in the game. Whatever you decide to become in Caldera, you'll have to do it on your own. Just like the Ultima series, Moonring does not hold your hand. There's no quest log whatsoever, so don't expect the game to tell you where to go or what to do. That is also the game's best feature. The sense of discovery and exploration you get from venturing into the world, uncovering the lore and its many secrets completely by yourself, is something you simply can't get from modern RPGs. The game's basic presentation lets your mind fill in the gaps, adding further to Moonring's atmosphere of mystery and danger. And as a bonus, it makes this massive RPG accessible to anyone. According to the game's system requirements on Steam, all you need to play is a PC with any kind of processor, a GPU made in the 21st century, and around 100 megabytes of space on your hard drive. While Moonring does feature some modern gameplay conveniences, such as tutorials, automatic note-taking and autosaves, this is still a hardcore RPG. Luckily, if you're unsure if this game is for you, Carter made Moonring completely free to play, forever. He explained his decision as such: life is hard, COVID sucked, everyone's poor and stressed, and I don't need the $300 this would make me. I'd rather take the goodwill. Moonring is perfect for both older gamers that are nostalgic for old school RPGs and younger gamers that want to experience an Ultima-like sense of freedom without all the dated annoyances. If this game interests you at all, definitely give it a try. Who knows, maybe you'll discover your next obsession. That was it for this list of hidden indie gems. Let me know in the comments if you've played one of these hidden gems already and what you thought of them. If you're into more mainstream games, then check out this video on why the Talos Principle 2 is even better than the original. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.